Hey everyone, Jennifer Lee Chan here from NBC Sports Bay Area. It is your Friday update, and there is a little bit of NFL news. Um, Pete Carroll is set to be the oldest head coach in NFL history. He is currently 73 years old. He turns 74 in September, and he has been hired as the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. Crazy. Um, but Pete Carroll, I mean, the defense in Las Vegas, their roster is not terrible. It's not great, but if they can retain Max Crosby and they can do some other things on defense, Pete Carroll will get the defense dialed up. I mean, that's his forte. He is a defensive genius, and he is a guy who is young at heart. So while sometimes you get guys that don't relate necessarily to younger players, I think Pete Carroll is a guy who kind of has that young, effervescent, gum smacking uh, attitude. But he's a guy that I think a lot of players respect. He has in 14 years in Seattle, he won 227 games and lost 137. That is a 60% win percentage, which is pretty high. Um, so yeah, he is 73 years old. I think the AFC West has the oldest group of coaches. Um, Jim Harbaugh is 61. Sean Payton, Denver Broncos head coach, is 61, and Andy Reid is 66. Um, Funny, Jim Harbaugh and Pete Carroll have been competing against each other since the Pac-10 was the Pac-10 and not the Pac-12 when Pete Carroll coached at USC and Jim Harbaugh coached at Stanford. And then again later, Jim Harbaugh with the 49ers and Pete Carroll with Seattle. And then now again, Jim Harbaugh with the Chargers and Pete Carroll with the Raiders. I think this is I think the Raiders is kind of one of the least attractive jobs for a lot of the candidates that were out there because the roster is in such disarray. They have some pieces, but it's going to take a lot for them to put together a roster. And it's kind of similar to when Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch took over with the 49ers. They knew it was going to be a complete rebuild. They knew it wasn't going to happen overnight. It was going to take a couple years for them to get better. And we saw that happen, right? 2017, dismal. 2018, dismal. 2019, that's when D'Amico Ryans kind of came in, Nick Bosa came in, and Jimmy Garoppolo was healthy. And that is when the 49ers went to the Super Bowl in Miami. Um, that was the arrival of Deebo Samuel. It was just a complete turnaround, but they were like on the brink. And, the first 2 years of Kyle and John Lynch, you could see the potential. You could see progress. And especially in 2018, you could see that, there were glimpses of where, okay, this is going to be a really good defense. This is going to be a really effective offense. You saw glimpses of where they could be really good. And so I think that's what it'll take. It'll take a little while for Pete Carroll to get the Raiders up and running. And, I thought Jim Harbaugh would have an even better season in his first year with the Chargers just because the roster that they have and it was in a better shape than let's say the Raiders. Plus Jim Harbaugh when he came to the 49ers that first year, he's kind of known as being a fixer. He can take a roster, figure out ways to put people in the best situation possible, and then they start winning. So it'll be fun to watch the AFC West going forward. And I think I would think Pete will be given some leverage, right? The roster and the situation of the state of the franchise at this point, I would think they would give him a little leeway because they're not going to be good next year. I think it'd be really difficult for the Raiders to be good next year. And I've heard on the interwebs that a possibility for Pete Carroll to get a bridge quarterback is Russell Wilson. Now, they did not get along at the end of their tenure together in Seattle, but I can't remember which social media I was reading, but apparently they've buried the hatchet. He's a guy that could come in as a bridge. I also think that a guy like Sam Darnold, USC ties, Sam Darnold is, Sam is Sam. He didn't have a good 2 games when the games were too big for him, but Sam Darnold did a really good job at kind of being the bridge for the Vikings when JJ McCarthy got hurt. So Sam is a very viable option for the Raiders to get a guy in there for maybe a year or two to be a bridge while they, it's not a huge quarterback draft class. But for them to get a guy in there. And you kind of look at it, maybe there is a Brock Purdy in this draft class where the Raiders can get a guy who is proficient, who understands football as opposed to being a wow guy on the field, physical stature. So that's all kind of the new coaching news. So Las Vegas Raiders, that's Pete Carroll. Jacksonville Jaguars, Liam Cohen, the dog ate my homework, is what he told the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then he ended up taking the job in Jacksonville after Trent Baalke was fired. So if you didn't get the whole story on that, watch my video from yesterday. The Jets head coach is Aaron Glenn from the Detroit Lions. Bears coach is Ben Johnson, offensive guy, which is good for Caleb Williams. And New England, of course, that's been the longest one. It's been announced the longest time ago was Mike Vrabel. So those are the coaching changes as of now. Still no news from the Bay Area about whether it's Robert Saleh or not. But I think as these jobs kind of get filled, I think it's more likely that Robert Saleh gets hired as the 49ers defensive coordinator. With Pete getting hired as the Las Vegas head coach, that is one less option for Robert Saleh. He did interview for the Dallas Cowboys head coaching job, but he did not interview for the Saints, as far as I know. So only one more job left to be filled for before Robert Saleh's options are kind of just the 49ers as the defense coordinator. So it looks like it's leaning that way, but stranger things to happen. Thought it was going to be Robert Saleh in Jacksonville, and it wasn't. So, all of these things are kind of on feel and kind of what I get a sense of when I talk to people that are involved in the situation. So it looks like, every day that goes on, it seems like the odds are getting higher and higher that Robert Saleh is going to be the defensive coordinator and have a reunion back with the 49ers. One other coaching news, Bobby Slowik was fired as the Houston Texans offensive coordinator. And man, he was on the rise in 2023 after, CJ Stroud basically kind of having one of those rookie of the year type of performances in his first year with the Houston Texans. Now, they did not have as good of a year in 2024, obviously, fell out of the playoffs, but is Bobby Slowik, who's been under Chris Foerster, who's been under Kyle Shanahan. Is he the scapegoat in a situation? Kind of think maybe that's the case. But, I think he's a guy who has shown he can be good and probably will land as, somewhere where he's an assistant. He could be a candidate to be back on the 49ers staff in some capacity on the offense. So we'll see what happens there. And I will talk to you soon. If any news breaks, you'll get it right here. All right. I hope you guys are well. Please follow along. Please like, please comment, and share this with your friends. All right. Subscribe.